The Good Ride. Average riders helping average riders worldwide.
Yes, standard.
So I've spent a lot of time on the Yes Standard, especially last year when the new design came out, and compared it to the former Yes Standard, the 16-17 Yes Standard versus the 17-18 Yes Standard. And then just got on this, and I was lucky enough to have the Ghost in the 156. So kind of went out and did a comparison. I know this board really well, and I knew the older model even better. And you know, last year for me personally, I loved the old Standard so much, I was a little heartbroken that the new Standard had such a different ride that didn't really work as well with my boot size, a size 9. And is it a mid-wide? Kind of, yes, but it's also doable in, you know, a regular boot size like a 9, 9.5, 10, that kind of thing. The more you get closer to 10, 10.5, 11, the better this board performs. But it's still very doable, and you know, rode it again this year and compared it against the Ghost back there, and it's such a fun board. It's just, you know, it's just a little slow. I tried getting through some bumps. I did each one on a bump line. This was a little easier, but it just wasn't really easy to weave in and out of bumps, which isn't a big deal for most, because most people don't want to hammer through bumps, including myself. I mean, I rarely have a day where I'm like, yeah, I just want to just hit this mogul line all day. Nobody wants to do that. Getting in and out of some trees, it's a little slower for me to kind of get through trees quick, and you know, I tried to take it through the half pipe, and it just I didn't feel that comfortable with this width, where I really enjoyed the old Standard, because, you know, when I got up to the coping, it was so easy to just change edges and come back down. Like, because I'm not, you know, Mr. Dynamic in the pipe, I just like carving the walls, and when I got up to that wall and you want to come back down, felt like a little more work, and it was a little more sketchy for me. I think it's something I could get used to, but you know, that's that. And the stance width's okay for me. 21.5, I can, with, you know, like Union Atlas and their big discs, I could use the slam back at 21.5 and slide each one out as far as I could and get probably to 22 or maybe a touch past it, which is doable for me. But you know, going from 23 as a reference stance to 21.5, going down 1.5 inches seemed like a lot. I would have been stoked with like 22, 22.5, like they did with the Pick Your Line. But that's my personal take. Everybody has different stance widths, so if, you know, I was just talking to another guy who loves 21.5, so he's stoked this is the way it is now because he can use those slam back inserts. Make sure you don't pair these up with mini disc bindings, because then you can't use the slam back inserts. And there's 5 centered and 2 set back. There's a reference stance this year. You know, this is a directional volume twin, so you know, the nose has more volume than the tail, but they're the same width, and the side cut is a twin. So, but when you set it back, that tail acts more like a tapered board, and you've got directional float, and you can get, I think, up to like 4.5 inches back on board, which is really good for an all mountain board like this. And that's what makes this much more versatile than the Ghost, because the Ghost doesn't have those slam backs. I wish it did. Now, if you really want to drive and have camber-esque turns, but still have some catch-free feel and have a little float due to some early rise, then the modern camber of the Ghost is your call. Now, if you want a versatile kind of do-anything board, and this width works better for you than it does for my size 9s, then this is definitely the call, because this butters better. This has a setback for powder, so you can ride this centered, ride it switch really well, and then set it back on powder days and get some good directional float. And this extra volume really helps it float. I'd probably get a 153. I think that would be a really fun board for me, but the stance width is just so narrow it doesn't work. I couldn't even use the slam backs, and I can barely get it centered on board with the 5x2s. So, but all in all, I mean, if this works for your stance width and your boot size, it's truly a fun board. Yeah, carving's way more fun with the Ghost, but this can still carve pretty well. It's a little quicker, a little more, it hurries you through the carve a little bit more. Where that Ghost has more resistance, it's way more rewarding of a turn. But this still has a little bit going on there. I don't know if I'd want to see this modern camber. At first I thought when I was riding the Ghost, I was like, man, I really love to see the Standard and the Ghost combined. Then I rode the Standard and I'm like, oh, okay, I like this butter ability. I like this easier turning, more playful ride, and it was still fun to carve, but just not as much fun as that. And so I can see why there's two, even though they have the exact same shape. So all in all, love the look of the new Yes Standard. I like this board a lot. Not sure if it was a board I'd want to own personally, but I could see how it could easily become, you know, a one-board quiver. It's like the best definition of all mountain, modern all mountain. One of the better definitions of modern all mountains out there if it works with your boot size and your stance width. So, you know, the Yes Standard, I miss the old one, but this new one's pretty good. And if you're, you know, if your specs are different than mine, you know, I'm a size 9 boot. Oh, I rode these with the Adidas Xterra and the Union Atlas, as you can see, and that worked really well for me. I like the more responsive boot with this board because it's slower turning for my size 9 boots, and I could turn this a little better, but it still is kind of slow. But all in all, if it works for your specs, you're gonna get an amazing board. And we don't really have like mid-wide favorites, but if we did, this would probably be one. It's not for everybody, but some will truly love this. And if you're looking for a one-board solution, this, and the specs work for you, this is one of the better calls. I wouldn't say it's just 100% a mid-wide, but it's mostly mid-wide. There you have it.